Hi, this is Dodger, and you're watching my show.
Three, two, one, ready, go.
Man, I feel like everybody's been talking about Pluto lately. Like, it feels as though Pluto was part of a big friends group, and we were like, I don't know if Pluto should be in the Planet Club. And then we all kicked him out, but now we're reflecting on all the good times with Pluto and feeling really bad about it. And for those of you who don't know why people are talking about Pluto right now, it's because there's a probe that we sent for Pluto like years ago, like a long time ago. And it made it within like a very close margin of when we thought it would make it because science is awesome. Also, did you know that the probe that we sent to Pluto has the same CPU as the original PlayStation? What? So for our first piece of news, more Hideo Kojima drama because we just can't seem to get away from it. So not too long ago, we saw box art for Metal Gear Solid 5. And it said, much like pretty much every other Metal Gear Solid game has said, except for I think the first one, along the top, it said a Hideo Kojima game. Which, again, has been on pretty much every single game because he's so heavily involved in the process of making these games. Like, he is the Metal Gear Solid franchise, right? Which is why people are so concerned about the idea of him leaving and them continuing to make these games. But anyway, the final box art was shown, and that is gone, super gone. I think a lot of us expected that, especially with the way that things have been going. It just seems like a last disrespectful slap. You know, it makes me sad, because originally when I saw the one that had his name on it, I was like, oh, at least they'll still put his name on the cover. Nope. Gone from everything, gone forever. And again, it's not like this is really news anymore, like, oh, Konami screwed over Kojima again, and all of us go, what? I'm so shocked. But I just wanted to, this will probably be the last time that I ever talk about this, because I've talked about it so much, but this just seemed like the final nail on the coffin of their relationship. I can't get over how many car noises are happening while I'm trying to record this. Stop! Deep Silver, the publishers of the Dead Island franchise, have fired their developers, Yager Studios. Just to be clear, Yager never worked on Dead Island 1, but they are the development team for Dead Island 2 until now. Now they've been completely axed. They are citing a difference of opinion, which I find totally believable, and here's why. So, Yager Studios is kind of well known for doing these games that are very intellectual, very dark and intellectual, and have a lot of meaning and purpose to them. And I remember watching the very first trailer for the first Dead Island game, and I was thinking, whoa, this game is going to be intense. And it wound up sort of being a farce, right? It wound up being nothing like that trailer that we saw. And I feel like with them hiring Yager, who takes their work very, very seriously, Deep Silver hiring Yager kind of created this situation where they weren't ever going to see eye to eye. Deep Silver, along the lines of the first Dead Island game, probably wanted to make sort of a silly game about destroying zombies, right? And Yager saw a lot of potential in there to have there be some depth. And I get the feeling that, you know, Deep Silver takes this franchise very seriously. And I think that Yager was probably pushing a little bit to change stuff constantly. That seems to be the most obvious situation that happened. And any of you who are like, oh, poor Yager, don't worry, they're working on Dreadnought, they're fine. But that probably does mean that we're gonna wait quite a while longer for Dead Island 2 to come out, because they might be starting from scratch. I don't know what they're gonna do with it. A lot of my friends who still play World of Warcraft have often said that PvP could use a little bit of fluffing, right? It's gotten a little bit boring. Some of the maps feel really unbalanced or even sort of abandoned by Blizzard. So Blizzard has put together what's called Mercenary Mode, and it sounds super interesting to me. Basically, it's where, so you know how World of Warcraft has two factions, Alliance and Horde. It's where you can join PvP but decide, I'm gonna work for the other faction. And it's so sad to read the responses to this because pretty much everyone is saying, wow, that's a really good idea. That sounds super fun. Unfortunately, it's too late and I've already moved on, you know? Like, that's such a sad way to look at it. Because it sounds like the amount of content that people were promised in this most recent expansion has fallen short yet again. Like, this has been a consistent problem with their expansion. Despite their claims that with this most recent expansion, they were going to address problems with, like, raids and PvP and arena, all of that, right? It's left players feeling like they're not really being taken care of, or like they're not really important. And after all this time, there's still that weird delineation of, I've sunk so much time into this, I can't leave now, and I've sunk so much time into this, it might be time to move on. So there's a game called The Flock that is in closed alpha right now. It looks really, really interesting to me. Basically, the idea of it is that you're on a planet that has been taken over by a group called The Flock, and they're kind of like weird monster humanoids. But there's always going to be one person who is the carrier, and it's like a fairly normal looking person, but with a light. If you attack the carrier, you become the carrier. So your goal is always, as part of the flock, your goal is always to become the carrier, right? It's kind of like, it's an interesting horror version of tag. But here's the thing that's got people asking a lot of questions. The developers are claiming that once a certain number of people have died as the carrier, the game is over. Like, forever. And you might be sitting there going, that seems weird. Why would they put so much work into a game that has such a short lifespan? Good question. So I have a lot of thoughts about this because this seems like a really interesting idea, but I don't think that they can charge for a game like this, and here's why. It will be very difficult to charge for a game that will only last for as long as the other players are competent. Like, for me to put forward money for an experience that could last a very short amount of time or could last a very long amount of time, I don't know that I would feel very comfortable doing that. Will they allow people to make their own servers and sort of reset the clock and do the experiment all over again? Who knows? But this idea that they would develop a game that they're now like in a closed alpha for, right? Like they're putting a lot of effort and energy into creating this experience for people. And if it were to not last very long, how does that benefit them? Which brings me back around to, they're definitely gonna wanna charge for this. But I think people are gonna feel uncomfortable about that. Maybe you can like pitch it as performance art. It's performance art game. I'd be kind of into that. But yeah, there is an alpha trailer that is out that I will link you guys to in the description that you can watch. It looks like a cool game. It looks interesting. But I think there are going to be lots of questions being asked about it. If you pre-order StarCraft II Legacy of the Void, you will get a prologue campaign that is called Whispers of Oblivion. Apparently Whispers of Oblivion is pretty short, but good, like really adds to the story. Now, should you feel uncomfortable about story elements being locked behind a pre-order wall? Maybe. Blizzard has made it clear that everyone will be able to have Whispers of Oblivion as long as they bought the game, but at a different time. So if you pre-order, you get it now, and you can just play through it now. And if you don't pre-order, then you get it eventually. For people who love StarCraft 2, I don't think that pre-ordering has really sounded like too much of a big deal, because you do get access to like early on campaign missions for actual Legacy of the Void. You get Whispers of Oblivion. They're trying to make it very much worth it, and if you're into StarCraft 2 anyway, there is a high likelihood you were going to buy Legacy of the Void. It's one of those interesting dividers about the pre-order conversation, because for a lot of people it's like, well, I was gonna buy this anyway because I love this franchise, or pretty much every game this developer makes I love, so I knew I was gonna buy it anyway, right? Like I felt very comfortable buying it. I think the big issue there that is very hard to argue is when you get something that no one else will ever get. For this, you do get stuff early that other people will eventually get, so if you were to say, well, I do get something exclusively, it's the experience before everyone else, right? If you're that guy who's like, yeah, I played it already. What? So whether or not I think it's a bad thing, I can't really say, because I have pre-ordered before in a situation where I was like, I knew I was gonna buy this game no matter what. Even if people said that it was bad, I was going to buy this game, right? So if you want to pre-order Legacy of the Void, you get Whispers of Oblivion, and it's short but awesome, apparently. And as our final bit of news, EVO! EVO is a fighting game tournament that happens in Vegas. It is happening this weekend. You can be watching it on Twitch, like right now, right before I started doing this show. I was watching some Smash Bros, so it's pretty awesome. Keep in mind, they do have multiple channels for the different heats as people are like building their way toward specific tournament heads, right? So there are lots of different EVO channels that you can be watching on Twitch. Just keep that in mind if you're looking for a specific game and you're like, no, they're not showing it. They're probably showing it on a different channel. Personally, I'm very excited to just put Evo on in the background while I'm like cooking, because those two things I think should go together. Street Fighter and lasagna, we'll say. I'm not gonna make lasagna this weekend. I don't know, maybe I will. But anywho, that is my show. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a positive or a negative response, feel free to leave it in my comment section. And if you'd like to have coffee with me, you can click wherever I put the annotation and it'll take you to my other channel. I would love it if you would check out my summer anime season video. It's kind of like I watch this show, and this show, and this show, and this show. I cover 15 different shows, but I do put timestamps in the description if you're only interested in a couple shows. It's just a response, an opinionated response. So if that sounds interesting to you, or if you don't really know anything about the shows that are going on right now, I'd love it if you'd watch it and tell me what you thought. But otherwise, I will see you guys again. Will I see you next weekend? Yes, I will. I'll see you guys again next weekend. Ba-pew! Ba-pew! I don't know what I'm doing. Bye! What?